Hey everyone, this is Varun here, and today I'm gonna have a conversation with Vyshak Simha, who's the Chief Marketing Officer at Kaizen Institute, and we're gonna be talking about how COVID-19 has affected business events and marketing in general, and what we can look forward to in the future. Hi Vyshak, thank you so much for being here. Do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, Varun. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to have this conversation with you. As you've already told the listeners that, I work for Kaizen Institute. Chief Marketing Officer is just a title. I have been in the field of marketing for about 10 years right now, predominantly in both ATL and BTL marketing. That's basically offline and digital activities that involve lead generation, and what are the different automation techniques, how do you really target customers, and events is one of the parts that we look at to target the right audience to increase your company's leads that can come in, which can eventually become potentials and then convert into sales opportunities. So I've been doing that for about 10 years right now. It's been an exciting journey till date. Always look forward to more of those journeys. So that's pretty much it. And it's been fun. It's extremely fun.
Thanks for the introduction, Vyshak. Can you tell me a bit more about what Kaizen does, like as a business?
So firstly, Kaizen is a Japanese word. Okay. So Kaizen Institute is the firm.
Mm-hmm.
And Kaizen is the word means change for better in Japanese, right?
Okay.
So it was first coined a long time ago, hundreds of years ago, but it became really, really famous when after the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, when Japan was a zero economy coming back and bouncing back to become a hero economy. They built this system or the culture of Kaizen. Okay, so everybody everywhere look to imbibe themselves in the philosophy of Kaizen. That helped them, get really ahead of all other economies. That's why now you see everybody says Japan is ahead of time. Okay, in terms of their technology, in terms of their people, everybody is so together. They also believe in different kinds of systems like Ikigai, where people live for like hundreds of years together. They have a very well-knit culture that's because of the Kaizen philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
They don't believe that people are problems. It's problems have to be solved at their own level. Okay, they don't blame people. So, and they also look to bring in this culture of saying, change for better. That's right. Every time, either at your workplace or your personal life, you always look at change, and you always change for better. And change is the only constant that is there in your life. So Kaizen made Japan the hero country in comparison to everyone. And Kaizen even became more famous purely because of Toyota.
Okay.
So Toyota had this person called Taichi Ono, and he built this system called the Toyota Production System. And Toyota Production System foundation was Kaizen. And today, because of that culture, Kaizen culture, Toyota is considered to be the best auto manufacturer in the world in terms of durability, in terms of revenue, in terms of customer satisfaction, service, everything. They're way ahead. Currently, I think they're about $200 billion ahead of their nearest competitor. Toyota is so proud of their Kaizen culture and how Taichi Uno built this system called the Toyota Production System, that they are open for their competitors to come in as well and share and see what they're doing. But they can say you'll never be a Toyota. Why? Because Kaizen runs in every person in Toyota. It's the culture.
Yeah.
And also how Kaizen Institute became pretty famous. We are about 30 years in the industry, 30 plus years, is when our sensei Masaki Imai, our founder chairman, also worked very closely with Taichi Ono. Okay, so Taichi Ono is more of a Japanese guy, doesn't speak much of English, and Masaki Imai was like a translator to him, and he used to go to the United States, understand how Ford, Chrysler, GM Motors, and all these guys work. And they used to come back, and that's how he helped him build the TPS system, okay, in terms of understanding. Then Masaki Imai wrote a book called Kaizen, okay, and that sold in millions of copies, okay. And he became really, really famous, and Kaizen again came to the entire world again. It got popularized there. Everybody knows Masaki Imai very evidently and said, okay, this is, why don't you help us? So that is the entire Kaizen philosophy. So we basically, as a company as well, we try to transform organizations from doing wasteful activities to being really productive, and by implementing the Kaizen philosophy, by bringing in the culture change, looking at solving problems rather than blaming people, bringing that culture of working together and saying, you know what, we want to achieve ourselves. We want to achieve some huge targets, and how everything can happen when you work together and when you have this culture of constantly improving yourself, constantly improving. So we believe, so our philosophy is live the Kaizen way every day, everywhere, everyone, rather than living it someday, somewhere, someone making these improvements over a period of time. That's what Kaizen is. Change for better.
Wow. I mean, that sounds so interesting. And you must be like talking to leaders, business leaders from all across the world, right? Because I read that Kaizen operates in more than 50 countries, and you being the chief marketing officer, you probably talk to all of these business leaders on a day-to-day basis. And what changes have you been seeing in their willingness to spend on new services and products, especially during this time?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. So we are in about 60 plus countries now, and I predominantly interact with people in Africa and Southeast Asia. Let me tell you one thing. When there is a crisis or like a recession, one thing that people always look for is improvements, okay? Because this is the time to improve, because when their productions have stopped, their things have services are not being rendered to a lot of people. It happens to our company as well, but this is the time everybody regroups and improves. But as you're saying, the fact that your question being, how do they open up to new products and services? There's always a resistance, okay? Especially when economies are down, okay? There is one thing that creates this resistance is the cash flow, okay? So when you got to buy new products and services, there has to be liquidity, there has to be cash. So, but for that to happen, either it's like a chain, right? Now, if I need to buy marketing services from an agency, which is a digital agency, I need to be able to render my services to my client, right? Who needs to pay me the money. In turn, I pay the agency. Now, similarly, that agency needs to buy some product from my client. It could be like somebody like a guy whom I'm servicing. Like, say, let's take, for example, a computer manufacturing company. Now, if the agency doesn't buy computers, okay, so there's no manufacturing of computers. I can't serve this computer manufacturing company. So that's what happens in a recession. That's how everything is connected to everyone. So there is a hindrance always, but when it comes to a certain improvement kind of a service, there are still people who look for it, who want to say, hey, listen, why don't you join us? Why don't you help us improve? That is always there with a willing company.
Yeah.
Let me tell you one thing. A company that believes in improvement, right, never cuts their improvement budget.
Yeah.
Okay. Because they know for a fact that they're investing in people to improve. But a company who believes in cost will always cut budgets.
Yeah.
So we always tell people, which I would like to quote my joint managing director, Jayant Murthy. He says, let's cut waste and not cost. Cutting waste is very important, because if you start cutting cost, you're losing out your muscles. The very muscles that you've trained for a period of time. It could be human, it could be machines, it could be anything. You're trained those, your marketing muscle, your sales muscles. you built that over a period of time, and you start cutting them because of costing, then you have to rebuild them, which is a lot more difficult. Like, I'm sure you go to the gym, I'm sure you worked out, and I'm sure you would have understood saying when you're working out, you're constantly spending money on it. You spend your time, your sweat, your energy, you eat the right food, you build a set of muscle.
Yeah.
Imagine when you stop working out, what do? And you start cutting on all these things. You stop eating the right food. You stop going to the gym. You stop spending the right kind of money. What will happen to your muscle? Your muscle will shrink, right?
Yeah.
The capability of running or lifting weights becomes lesser. So you never do that just because you have a crisis.
Yeah.
So people are willing to open towards products and services, but again, that is based on every industry is different. We deal with hundreds of industries right now. And based on the industry, now if you take an industry like, the airline industry. Now, airline industry can't do anything, but they have to cut costs right now.
Yeah.
Because you know what? Businesses nowadays live on a monthly basis. Like how people live on a month-to-month basis, hand-to-mouth kind of a scenario, so do businesses as well. If they get 1 crore today, it meets their expenses and needs so that the next month can be met. So they need that one crore or $100,000 every month. In just for an example, like how somebody would need $1,000 or a lakh of rupees every month to sustain his life, because they have got so much of liabilities that they keep up to make their businesses running. But great organizations, what they do is they always have cash flows. They don't put all their money into just buying in assets and liabilities. Like if you look at companies like Apple, you look at even an airline company like Indigo, they have cash flows that they bring in to sustain the organization on a long-term basis. Okay, so that's where it makes a lot of difference. So it's a lot of strategy and inputs that come in to play that game, but many organizations don't play that long-term game. Today they're running, but their evaluations will be extremely high. Okay, but they don't have cashes to match their evaluations. So when there is a hit in the economy, everybody is hit. So our founder Sensei Masaki Imai says, 99% of the organizations in the world do great when the market is up. Okay, when the market is good.
Yeah.
But the same 99% fail when the market is down, because they don't have the Kaizen thinking. They don't have this philosophy of, sustenance. How do you build a sustenance in the company? So that's what's been running through a lot of people. But we recently did a survey as well. People are not sacking people. A lot of companies are not doing that. We see a lot of companies saying that in the news, but those are just some of the big guys. But a lot of people nowadays that we are interacting with or we've dealt with are looking at it more holistically, and coming back and saying, okay, what do we really need to improve? What are the services that we really need to have? They are looking at improving by deleting, like not of human resources or important muscles, but the wasteful stuff. Now, when you don't need a product, you just have it lying there. Why would you need to buy more of those?
Yeah.
Or when you don't need a service of that kind, why do you need to buy more of that service? We do that as well. Like in our company, it's not like we're not spending money on softwares. Okay, we are doing that. Okay, it's not we are not spending money on any improvement activity ourselves. We are enriching our people. We are training our people. But we started cutting down our marketing budgets, which is not giving us the kind of ROI that it's supposed to be giving at this point of time. So you start to bring in and close in and say, hey, you know what do we focus on? What is really important? Our people are important. Ensuring those muscles stay intact is important. And then we move forward from there.
Yeah.
Hope I've answered your question.
Yeah. What I found really interesting was the workout analogy that you gave. Yeah, sure, we are working out, but I think we as marketers, we need to change the way we work out, in the sense we need to change the way we're approaching these companies with our services or our promise. So how have you changed your messaging or your approach? Because it's the same thing that we're giving them, but we're packaging it in a different way, right?
So you're trying to say, let me just try to understand your
Yeah.
question here.
Okay.
Okay. So your question to me is like, we're trying to sell the same thing, but how do we package it for somebody else to buy?
Now, how do you package it for this situation when people are losing jobs and people don't really have money to buy your stuff?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, see, when you talk about packaging, it's a product. You could even somewhat refer it to a service as well.
Yeah.
See, at this scenario, firstly, it depends on what you're selling, right? Now, if you're selling a credence good, which is like what we do, which is our consulting service, our whole motive to people is the fact that we were doing improvement activities then as well. But right now, what we are talking about, our method of saying is that take this crisis as an opportunity. Grab this as an opportunity and not as a failure in your company and something that you can't do. Why? Because you have so much more time to make these improvements right now. So that's the change in the way we are looking at it. And we say, why did these crises do happen? Why you even find it as a crisis is because you never had the concept of sustainability, right? That's the concept of a credence good. So you have to build a trust in people. So if you have the trust in people that you are the kind of person who do this improvement activity for them, then numbers don't matter, the costs don't matter, because you're adding value to a person. You're adding that need. He has the need, and you're just nurturing that need. But when you try to, if it comes to goods and services of which create the need and then they need to buy it, those goods and services have a tendency to fail.
Yeah.
Because at this kind of a scenario, creating the need is not something that can be done. Like if you come up with a new product, like say for example, in any manner of an add-on to your phone,
Yeah.
or like an accessory to a car, which is basically luxury, people will not pick it up because innovation at that angle will not work at this point of time. Because as I said, people would not buy something that they don't need at this point.
Yeah. It isn't essential.
It's not an essential. It's basically that people will come back and say, do I really need it right now? Can I not do it for like 6 months? Can I not keep it for like a year?
Yeah.
Is it okay? Because I do that as well. Let me tell you, my personal experience is the fact that there's a lot of things that I like to buy. But since COVID has hit me, okay, and I've been at these lockdowns, I've realized what I really used to spend on is pretty much I don't need to spend on it because I really can have whatever I want with a very limited amount of spending.
Yeah.
Now, this could come out of the fear that tomorrow will I have a pay cut, okay? Or it is just purely an understanding about what you really need. And once you start realizing that, you start buying in stuff like that. But then again, we are human beings, okay? So once we see an increase or spike in our salaries or growth or, in investments and stuff like that, we tend to increase our luxuries as well. Like a simple thing, like you may have the capacity to buy a bike or a car which is very expensive, which is luxurious, but can you live without it? Of course you can, right? So it depends purely on your purchasing capacity, how you would want to look at it. So now packaging that kind of a service. Now, if somebody you go and say, hey, listen, buy a Mercedes Benz, I've reduced it by 10 lakhs. Why? To a person who doesn't need it at this point of time, it'll never work. Yes. Even if you tell him saying that this Mercedes Benz or any particular car of this luxury category can do auto driving. It could be any car. I don't need that right now. It makes no sense to me. That it depends purely on what is it. I think products of need will always sell its way, and you could have different ways of doing that. But there will be certain products of highly essential, like your food, your grains, your house, and things that you really need to maintain at this point of time. And then there'll be some of these products and services which are in between, which is a need come luxury. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, credits goods, like services of consulting. It could be our kind of consulting. It could be digital marketing consulting agencies, like of that sort, or advertising agencies. All of these. Um, Now these are all something that come in between. There is a very thin line. You got to understand it based on each company and an organization. And then there are your extreme luxury ones, saying that when I have that extra 100 rupees or extra $100 or whatever you may call it, um, I would then maybe go for that just to try my luck at it.
Yeah.
That's how organizations look for things in this particular stage. Organizations as well as peoples. But then again, let me tell you that there are always flip side to this, where you have people who don't think straight, who will still go for luxury at a point of crisis and drive themselves into further crisis. Organizations still do that.
Yeah.
People still do that. That's human tendency. You can't have everybody understanding this concept of things, but we need to educate a lot of people as well, saying that, hey, listen, you know what, stick to your need at this point of time, because it's very much necessary that you look at your need, cut your wasteful buying, wasteful activities, anything that is you really don't need. Because if you start doing that, you will see that if you were spending $1 million in a month to sustain your company, you will see that you really don't need to spend $1 million. You could do it in $500,000, and you could still keep up to the 1 million revenue every month, even after the crisis is gone, and still do a half a mil profit. That's how companies need to look at it. So when you talk about packaging and all the other things, it's very, very important that you see how you look at a product or a service, and that's the meaning of it. Is it a need? If it's not a need, you're going to fail. There's a high chance of it, because you are going to spend a lot of money trying to create that need in terms of this, and then people may buy, people may not. So you have to look at it based on your services. So that's how it works.
Yeah, I think it's very important to be sensitive towards the situation and not just push products on people who don't even need it at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. That's where targeted marketing comes into play. So you have to be selective about spending your budget to the people who really need it.
Yeah.
So that's the crux of it. I think marketing over a period of time has become so targeted, and today the buyer, let me tell you, he's a very smart buyer. Okay. So that is one thing that you really need to understand, is that even before they buy your services or your product, they're 90% informed. Okay. Let me tell you, today the job of a sales guy gets a lot more easier if the marketing is done well, and if the buyer is well informed about the product or service. Because if you see like an Apple store, they don't have sales representatives anymore at an Apple store. They basically have customer service guys. Why? Because the customer already knows before he enters the store, he already knows what an Apple phone is. He knows 90% of the features which is already there.
Yeah.
Now, the store guy just needs to just tip him aboard for the remaining 10%. That's a little bit of the sales skills that it requires. So a little bit of marketing there.
Yeah.
But there are now situations where with online and e-commerce, products like phones and everything is just bought without even a sales guy intervening. That's the power of a buyer right now. He knows what he wants. He knows, and he will read. That's what internet is done today.
Yeah.
So you really don't need some guy to really hard sell if you have the right information to people.
Yeah.
That's where, different products, that's where I feel B2B and B2C are somewhere merging in,
Yeah.
in terms of understanding. Before, B2B is like this, always, because buyers were well informed. They used to read a lot about you, then come to you, ask for your services. Yeah. They know what they want. Now, B2C is getting there as well. They know about you. They rarely want to talk to a sales representative, okay, because they don't want to be sold on anything. Yeah. They want to be sure about what they want to buy. It's merging in. All right. That's how marketing is moved towards.
Yeah, everything's digital nowadays, and like you said, and speaking about digital, all events
Yeah.
have gone virtual now, right? Like
Yeah.
we know how important these events are to B2B companies, and now with everything moving to a more virtual platform, how far do you see this going on this way? And do you think these virtual events can ever replace the good old handshake and the good old, meet and greet of a real event?
Wow, that's a very interesting question, Varun. Uh, I think what you've asked me uh, says a lot about how your understanding about the events industry is, right? Let me tell you one thing. You have two questions to this: the effectiveness of these online events, which is webinars, and people do meetings online as well as host events online. How effective is that? And then your next question is, will it replace uh, the offline events which used to happen?
Yeah,
So let me take your second question first,
yeah,
and say, I don't believe that it will eradicate the offline events.
mm,
Now, you must be wondering why I'm saying this when everybody is talking about this new normal and everything's going to be online, people are going to go work from home, all of that. Okay. From the people that I've been speaking to, you need to understand the fact that this new normal is kind of like a marketing gimmick as well. Okay. For people who have established this, yeah, COVID is here to stay, but COVID's not going to be there forever. Humans are very resilient when it comes to this, and they will fight it, and they will get into a vaccine, and they will improve.
yeah,
But one thing it's going to do is the fact that we're going to still have events offline.
mm,
Why? Because humans like to interact face to face. It builds relationships. Okay. Even if you have amazing collaborative softwares, which, uh, which we use, MS Teams, Skype, Zoom, and Big Marker, and you have tons of it.
yeah,
But the reality is the fact that the more you interact with people, touch to touch, you want to shake hands with people, you want to sit with them, have a cup of coffee, build that rapport, meeting people face to face, I'm feeling this factor of relationship is something that's going to be there forever. That's humans. We want to connect with people. We want to touch people. We want to feel their presence to really build relationships. You can have some really great conversations. But let me tell you that to answer now, let me connect it to your second questions. But that doesn't mean the effectiveness of online events is going to go down once crisis is reduced, like something like COVID. Now, what's going to happen is it's made a lot of people realize that, sometimes you need to have the offline events like exhibitions and conferences where you really want to go interact with people and meet people. But then you need to have your online events to save on your budgets, to save on unnecessary wasting of time.
yeah,
Because everybody used to run to go have a meeting with a client far away. They used to fly. The convenience of flying has made a lot of people. But you understand there's a lot of waste of time.
yeah,
From being in the airport, from the travel time where you can't do anything, from the time, it's a lot of expenses. So the smaller meetings, which really didn't need to have that kind of a touch, right, will happen on webinars, will happen on meetings, will happen on that. And it's very useful for events to happen online as well, because it's a great lead generating model. Okay, it's a great lead generating model. And not that, exhibitions and conferences are not going to be great lead generating model, but with the time and effort that you spend on that versus to a webinar, say for example, your company has a webinar, or you would see that there'll be more registrations for it, be it free or paid.
yeah,
Why? Because let me give you a simple example. Now, you've gone to study in New Zealand, right? And say, for example, you are working right now. Okay, and you're not a person who needs to also improve yourself, like in terms of training. Now, you are a person who's working and you tell your boss saying, hey, listen, I need 5 days off because I need to go to India, or I need to go from whichever city you're in to another city to get yourself trained on masterclass on digital marketing. Okay. Or say masterclass on something else like sales skills. Your boss' immediate reaction would be, now you're gone for 5 days. Who's going to do your work for 5 days, right? That's one of the most important things, right? So you're gone for 5 days. It's kind of like a leave, right? Yeah. So first question would be, yes, how effective it is for you. That's all very important. Then a very important question is, if you're not there, who's going to do your job? Yeah. For the 5 days, because that's how 5 days is very critical. Even a day is very critical in terms of your working efficiency and your effectiveness, right? Because if I miss a day today of work, I'll be flushed with, say, today and work, tomorrow I'll be flushed with a lot of work, right? So when you have to travel and go for these events, these things start adding up. Firstly is your traveled event where you do it in a hotel is a lot more expensive than for an attendee to pay versus an online session, because the guy who's organizing this particular training will take into the cost of a trainer for the entire day. He will take the cost of the hotel, the food, the venue and everything. And then he'll say, hey, listen, you know what? It's going to cost you about $5,000. Yeah. Okay. Whereas the same training online could be like just for 2-3 hours in a day. Okay. You don't have to leave your working scenario which is the remaining 5 hours. You just have to compromise on 3 hours if it's in your working timing, or it could be past your working timing. And you're firstly saving on cost to yourself. You're saving on time, which is very important. And you're learning, which is improvement. So that is the difference that it will create. But then, for that reason, you shouldn't look at it and say, okay, I will never attend an exhibition or conference, it's never going to help me. Okay, that's the other part of it. You should attend those, because if you're just a person who's going to be just in front of your computer, where's your people skills? Yeah. What are you going to learn in terms of connecting? If you're trying to do sales, especially, every sales technique is being taught to you here in front, but you don't go interact with anybody. How are you going to even sell? The reality at the Gemba. So Gemba is the real place of work, or wherever it is, where you want to know where it is, or where you really action your activities. That's called a Gemba. It's a Japanese word again. Is the matter of it. So both cannot get eradicated and said, you know what is it? There's a lot of realization what webinars and online conferences and events can do, as well as the fact that, hey, you know what? We need to have these events as well. So the event companies who are organizing these things need to start looking at it a little bit more differently now, which is like these conferences and exhibitions. Now, they need to look at saying, okay, how they can make it more interactive with people, how they can get the touch of people. Because if they go back to the same, hey, come brand this, you will get leads concept, a sponsor or anybody will say, hey, you know what? I don't need to spend that much money to just get leads.
Yeah, makes sense.
Before they spend $10,000, he'll spend $1,000 to get the same amount of leads, and he would have spent less amount of time to get those 1,000 leads or 100 leads or whatever it may be. So the event organizing company or the events industry need to look at it in a different manner. Think when it comes to lead generation or when it comes to knowledge, how do you really add value to the person that he has to travel and come there? See, now in this period till COVID is there, it's going to be very difficult to have that kind of an event because of the norms. You don't want to get caught with COVID, right? So event companies need to really look at that aspect and say, okay, how do we do this? How do we really add value so that tomorrow, because now people have got a taste of this. If you go to Udemy or any of these kind of trainings and stuff like that, if they do a training, it's just 500 rupees for the certification. So that taste is always there. So they need to be really innovative in looking at this aspect.
Yeah. See, yeah, I understand there are a lot of advantages to these virtual events, but I feel they can never completely replace certain aspects of a real life event, such as, like, you'd in a real life event, you'd book a slot, like a speaking slot, and
Mhm.
address all of these potential customers that you have, or you even had an option to book a slot with one particular person from a particular company. How are you
You
doing
can do
all?
that.
Yeah, how are you doing all of this through virtual events?
Oh, it's very simple to do that. It's not at all hard to have somebody have a speaking slot at a virtual event. It's pretty much the same thing. And for a matter of fact, to set up one-to-one meetings at a virtual event is 100% possible. Because um, let me tell you, if you use softwares like, I'm not trying to advocate any marketing here, but of this software, but if you use softwares like BigMaker or Zoom, or even say GoToWebinar, and all of these tools, you can have somebody sponsor and come and say, listen, you know what, I'm having a conference during this session or a webinar. You can have your sales pitch for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, addressing thousands of audience or a lot more than what it is. See, right now, webinars and sessions have a capacity of about 10,000 people. Okay. You don't need to address more than 10,000 people. And people are doing that. People have these small slots in events where they come and showcase this. There are web banners that you can put up in these events, like pop-up banners, pop-up offers. There are enablers of that. Software is doing that. There are amazing softwares which can host full-fledged events, which can make it like you can set up a meeting with somebody. There are softwares like that. So don't at all underestimate that is not possible. It is 100% possible. But no matter what my conclusion is, what you can have as an offline event, they can be an exact clone on an online event.
Yeah.
You can have booths. You can have booths which can show. Maybe you can't touch. The biggest factor which will add value is the touch and feel factor.
Yeah. And you
That's the
can't
only
give
thing.
out freebies.
You can give out freebies as well. People can still get a freebie and they can go get it delivered to your house. Amazon does that very well. So freebies is not, it's like, say for example, if somebody is showing you a tile, okay, you're an interior designer, like let me give you an example. You're an interior designer or an architect or any sort, and you're seeing a tile on the computer, okay. Now that is a problem there. You seeing a tile on a computer and seeing a tile face to face and touching it is a different beat. So you have to know how the tile feels. What's the texture of it? Is your client going to be happy about that texture? Because now these are stuff which you really need to do. You can't just select everything online and then just expect it to be, hey, okay, fine, I went to this exhibition where, I found this jewelry, for example. You got to wear it. Even though there are softwares with augmented saying that, hey, you can go inside and outside of a building, you can kind of, but at the end of the day, that factor can never be taken out. No matter you have like an amazing speaking slot, see product presentation, but somebody would want to touch your product and feel the product or experience that product. Now that's where exhibitions and conferences come into play.
Yeah.
That's where this can never ever change. Even if you want to solve a problem, you can't solve a problem online if your manufacturing unit is messed up, right? You need a technician to go there and solve the problem. Even if you go there and keep your webinar tool or anything saying, hey, sir, look at this through this, can you tell me what the problem is? He can guide you. But then there has to be still somebody doing that fix. So that touch and feel aspect will never go, no matter what it is, because that's reality. That's how it is.
Yeah. So I think it's safe to say that the good old events are here to stay. But
Yeah.
at the same time, virtual events aren't going away either.
No, that's exactly what it is. Both are here to stay.
Yeah.
Now both are going to compete at different levels. Now the person who's hosting the event needs to understand what is his value proposition. Because If he's trying to compete himself to a webinar, he's going and with the same kind of products and services, and he's doing the same kind of copy and content writing, he's going to lose miserably. Because if he's saying, I'm going to get you this kind of leads, you're going to get this branding, and I'll charge you 10 lakhs for it, a webinar will shoot you down left, right, center. There is no way you can compete that. But if he says, hey, listen, you know what, you really want to get the sense of a product, people need to attend this kind of an event, then he's got a chance. He's got a damn good chance.
Yeah.
I've been at the exhibitions. I attend those. I have, see, unless I'm buying a software which has no touch and feel, which I do experience in a certain manner as well. Like I do have trial runs and all that.
Yeah, you do get a demo and a trial run.
Exactly, right? But if I'm buying a fridge or if I'm buying a car and I want to go to the auto expo, I want to know what the car is. Okay. Or say, for example, if there are exhibitions and conferences for everything. And also when I want to meet some people who are some real big daddies and just saying hi and hello to them through the phone versus me going out for a dinner with them, having a drink with them. And these kind of things will never change because that's how people build relationships. That's how people feel and understand what is the right thing to do. So everything is here to stay. There is nothing can beat the other, but it purely depends on the people who are involved in marketing it. Yeah. That's the key of it.
So you must be running a lot of virtual events every day, right? What are some of the best practices to run a successful virtual event?
So first thing is, which we have been constantly having, is that when you're running a virtual event, always ensure your tech is right. Okay. That's like your internet speeds. So you need to have good, fast internet. That's the first thing. Second thing is a good laptop which can sustain that kind of a speed in your working scenario, because webinars and all are live. So you don't want it to be hanging when you're having some polls and questionnaires. That's one very important thing. Second thing is that always use earphones or headsets and don't rely on your computer speaker to give you the best audio, right? So even if you're doing a webcam session, ensure the fact that you wear an earphone. There's nothing wrong in it. It's the reality. You want to hear people better. You want to talk better. It's more clarity. So earphones is a must. You don't really need a high Fonda earphone, but if you want to have it, that's again a luxury. I'm using something which I use for my phones basically, which still gives an amazing audio, but ensure you have that, which is good, a decent one. And if you're doing a webinar in terms of a video sharing, like a webcam share, ensure you have a good webcam. There are good products across. You get it from a range of, I'm going to talk in INR, from good 2,000 to 3,000 rupees to even a 50,000 rupees. That's like about $1,000 webcam, which is from good companies, which you can add it on, so that there's clarity, people can see it, it looks good in terms of HD. And the next thing is, while hosting this webinar, be well prepared in terms of what you're going to present. You also have good presentation, well designed, very visually attractive presentations, so that people can understand it well. It should not be a lot of words. Talking should be from your end. The presentation should be more visual in terms of images and not just text everywhere, because a lot of people do that in their presentation. They write like a lot of text in their presentation and they just read out that presentation. You shouldn't be doing that. That's pretty much a very important thing. Next is, you should always have some kind of a handout to give out to people during these webinars and sessions. It could be a small brief about what you did, or some Excel sheets like checklists that you'd like to share to people, or you want to give your company brochure for them to come back to you or learn from you.
Yeah, like a white paper or an ebook or something.
Something like that during the session. It's very important that you have those so that it can add value to people, because they'll be always looking out to learn more or buy your services. So you don't want to really tell them, hey, you know what, I'm trying to sell my services, but you want to do that. That's your objective of it. If you do all of this, that's in hosting part of it. There's also another part which is pre-event and post-webinar as well. You need to ensure the fact that you market it well. Your audience know it on your social media platform. Very important. If you're doing a live webinar, that means you're well connected to your Facebook, your LinkedIn, and your Twitter, or Instagram maybe. And there are plenty of social media platforms now. We predominantly use just Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram, and YouTube, because that's where all the content is. And then ensure the fact that your attendees have a great experience. Get in a software that experience is built. So when he registers, he gets an email saying, thank you for registering, block your calendar, put it in your calendar. And then, it's basically automated very well. So it sends him a reminder one day before the webinar automatically. And then 30 minutes before sends him another reminder. Very important, because see, a lot of people have a lot of things that they're doing. Now this is very important for both free and paid. And especially if it's a paid webinar, you want to ensure that you remind him multiple times and ensure that he attends it. Even though he's paid, you should not be like, hey, you know what, he's paid, it's his problem. You need to create that experience. So once he's done with the webinar, ensuring that when the video is published, there's an email that goes out to him saying that the video is published. And following that, there is also a survey link saying, please give us your feedback. Very important to know what they want, because the voice of the customer is very critical for any business. So you need to understand that. These are some basic stuff, foundation. If you do this, the rest of it will just follow, in terms of your marketing strategies and, all of that anybody, you need to customize it for your company, but these are your best practices to ensure.
Yeah, I think it's very important to keep it very interactive, because that's the closest you could get to a real life scenario as well.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean,
right.
Yeah, those are very good points that you came out with, Vyshak.
Yeah.
I think I've taken enough of your time and I've learned a lot. Thank you so much. I hope people listening to this have learned a lot as well.
Thank you so much, Varun, for this wonderful opportunity for me to share these insights. It's very interesting to always have a conversation with a fellow marketer who's looking to expand their knowledge as well as, teach other people. For the listeners, guys, always look at this opportunity as something that you can grow and something that you can, learn over a period of time. Don't worry, you don't have to be a marketing whiz to start doing everything at the first go. Take your time, take your pace. You will get there, and you will do good. You will do good in your marketing as well.
Thank you so much, Vyshak. I wish you all the best. I wish Kaizen all the best as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Varun.